Welcome to SolarWinds Lab. Tom and I are joined today by Claus from Microsoft, and we are talking about how incredibly helpful hype is in getting our jobs done day to day in IT.
Yeah, hype. Hype for things like autonomous databases, or the blockchain, or how about 5G? That's lots of hype.
Now, come on, you've got the Microsoft guy in the show. You got to talk about the biggest hype thing of the last 9 years.
Yeah, the cloud.
The cloud.
Yeah.
You got to talk about the cloud.
Yeah, but at this point, is it actually hype, or is it just a thing like virtualization or anything else?
It's like a zombie. It keeps on coming back. More and more hype keeps on coming back about the cloud. But really, it's just a series of tools and technologies that you can use in your everyday job, no matter where you happen to be on that hype curve.
Right. So, okay, well, what should we talk about, you think?
So today, I think we should look at that hype curve and help them understand where they might be along that adoption phase.
Okay, and you know what? I can interject with some ideas on stories for customers that I've heard about what they're using, what they find useful during those different phases.
That'd be great.
That'd be awesome. And then along the way, we'll also sort of give some recommendations about how to be really successful and measure where you are along that curve. Sort of, the advantages, disadvantages, and some specific ways that you can actually make it a lot easier for yourself and get more out of the technologies that are part of cloud.
So what I think we should do first is maybe get a picture to help people understand what that hype curve really looks like. Don't you think a diagram would always be helpful? Yeah.
I think so. You know what? I got this. I got this. So over here, we've got time. And then over here, we have excitement. And now, the way new technology comes out, you've got marketing slope at the very top and peak, lots of excitement, and then it goes down to the pit of despair. And then eventually, it goes over to productivity and adoption.
Yeah, so basically, we can never do this, computers can do this, and then it's just a budget item, and it's just something that you use every day.
Right. And here's just a whole bunch of marketing, babble, and speak, blockchain will solve everything.
But they change from year to year, right?
Well, they do. And that's where you're going to get the most value out of this, is that if you look at a hype curve for just one particular year, well, it's actually quite useless. You have to look at them year over year. It has to be like your own time series. You have to compare them one year after another, because that way you can see where something like a blockchain would move along the curve, because sometimes technologies become obsolete. Even at the height of their excitement, all of a sudden, before adoption can happen, it's gone.
But then doesn't it mean that the whole thing is basically delayed by some amount of time, because it's a measurement of excitement and despair, and it's not a measurement of what you're actually doing. It's really sort of expectations after the fact that you're sort of being measured against?
I would say so.
I mean, let's put this into something more tangible. Let's talk about a technology that all of us have used and has actually gone through this whole cycle of what things are. So how about virtualization, right? Virtualization back in the day, ring 0, ring 1 hypervisors and that sort of stuff for where people happen to be. It got very much hyped, all sorts of craziness, everyone is all there. All of a sudden it went down into, no, I'm never going to leave my bare metal servers, I'm always going to stay on bare metal. Makes no sense, I lose too much power and performance. And now it's gone through the last of the progression. It's just everyday table stakes. Everybody does virtualization, regardless of your provider.
Yeah, that's a great example.
So what would be a better way of looking at that?
So I think we should talk about this from a simple adoption curve or adoption wave or whatever term you want to use, but simply it's adoption for a life cycle for where things come.
So how would we help them to figure out where they are along that adoption curve?
Let's actually start with a chart that actually is based on data, like an application life cycle. Think of it like a snake that's eaten an elephant and then back down again.
That sounds gruesome.
So you have a few people at the very far end that were early adopters, and then there's a few that are really catching up.
Right. And where's the majority?
But where's the majority?
Right here in the middle.
Well, how do you figure out where you are?
Well, from my experience, it's been a matter of kind of stepping back and looking at the projects that your organization and you have been doing. Like, if you kind of step back and look at the last 6 to 8 months or 9 months of what's been going on, is it just all the same and nothing new and nothing's changed? Then more than likely, if you're not really kind of self-aware, you're probably going to be in the latter half of that particular curve for adoption of new technologies. If maybe there are a couple of small things that are popping up that are kind of like a little small rogue group that's going off and doing their own thing with a cloud service or doing their own thing with Kubernetes or containers or something like that, maybe that's going to be more of the front end of that particular curve before the adoption goes. But the important part is that you have to invest and kind of step back and analyze what's going on around you and take an active interest in this. Get your head up out of the toil of every day, what's going on.
Well, the other thing that I hear you saying, though, is that there's no shame, and you're measuring just where you are, and mostly you individually and your organization, maybe you're both different, but none of that, there is no measurement against hype. There are certainly expectations that people have to deal with, but you're saying that you just are somewhere along that adoption path, and then there's going to be benefits, there's going to be challenges, and then some basic tricks that you can use to make that a lot easier.
Absolutely. I mean, you're literally looking at a technology. Does it solve a problem that I have? And then looking at your readiness as an organization, as an individual, to actually use this to solve a problem that I have inside of my organization.
I would also remind the audience that it's industry specific. So there will be certain parts or pieces of these technologies that might be really critical for you to be on top of and be an early adopter for. And other things I can wait. I can wait for that to be mature.
COBOL.
And then COBOL. But so you don't have to feel pressure that you're missing out on something, that you're falling behind just because there's something in the early excitement phase. It can be industry specific as well.
And there's absolutely stuff that you can do when you do this analysis to find out where you are in this particular learning adoption, to determine what I can learn from it, and then how can I leverage it and start to apply it inside of my work environment. So there's something for everybody across this full spectrum.
So is there a specific set of recommendations that we could give to people regarding this adoption curve?
Well, let's start over here in the early adopter phase.
All right.
That's where everyone kind of starts.
Oh, you and I both started, I think.
Absolutely. I was down here like 9-10 years ago.
And so everything that you did 9-10 years ago, perfect, you wouldn't do anything differently now.
Absolutely not. I would change it because things have evolved. New technologies have come out and different ways of doing things to bring out new efficiencies that come about. So if you're inheriting a project that might have been an early adopter years ago, you need to go through some phases of understanding, is that still optimal? Because things have changed.
So what was the advantage that drove you to that in the first place? So why would you do it?
Well, new capabilities that didn't exist, for instance, for me, for on-premises. Right. I wanted to be able to go off into scale and take advantage of this new thing called cloud. And so it simply was understanding the capability of, hey, I can spin up VMs inside of Azure. When we actually first started, we didn't even have VMs and infrastructure. Right. So that was all in a PaaS-based service. So now, as soon as VMs came along, I'm like, I can understand that. It's virtualization to the next level. Let's go off and implement some stuff.
Right. So for some businesses, it was a huge competitive advantage, right? I mean, they always trot, kind of Netflix out on stage to talk about it. But yeah, so early on, especially if you had some, VC backing and you had a little excitement going on the curve, then moving to cloud was an option to really gain some visibility about what you were doing. But to your point, then you've got a lot of risk.
I mean, about to say, operationally, I need to go back and validate that it's still there. Like maybe the VMs I chose are now out of date. I should be using different size VMs. Maybe I'm not using enough of the VMs, so I can shrink the size down to save some cost. Maybe I was going to come off with a better way of having load balancers in front of them, like a whole bunch of different technologies that came out after that first early adoption. But I don't know necessarily all the different things that are involved in that original project if I wasn't the original creator of that project.
Right, and there's also some cost disadvantages maybe to being early, in that you are maybe going to have to do some rework. Maybe you've got some old tech, you would have done it differently. Or maybe you've got a bunch of shadow instances or infrastructure that was set up maybe by developers or someone else that's been out there running for a long time. What about multi-cloud? I think is there more use of multi-cloud for early adopters, or is it about the same for everyone?
There's only one cloud. I work for Microsoft, of course. No, seriously. No, multi-cloud is definitely one of those things that's I think it's about on the peak, if I will, as far as the hype is concerned. Right. Because, I mean, it definitely is possible. You can go off and run different components inside of different cloud providers, and even on-premises as a private cloud as well. But again, there are different efficiencies, different standards. Standards change the way you connect into things. I think you guys had Pierre Lamont on here for another one of these things. He actually wrote an article about how to connect AWS and Azure, and then he needs to rewrite that article just recently because the technology's changed. Absolutely. People make that connection work.
Right, and I think that's the real thing that's a discovery for people about multi-cloud, is the idea of, well, I can run the same workloads across everything. But really 10 years ago, it was a bunch of differentiated services. They'd pick Cloud A for one particular feature, Cloud B for another one. I mean, my original phone system at my house was IBM Bluemix because they had some early voice recognition technology, right?
Got his own private phone system at home?
Exactly.
It's silly stuff. But the point is, I had to consolidate that, right? Yeah. And so a big part for the complexity, and a lot of our customers talk about, is they are doing what we've always done in IT, which is to go ahead and combine those into a smaller number of instances, right? So that is now you're re-implementing a lot of times something that was maybe an early version of a service that's not actually ubiquitous across platforms, and being able to consolidate. Again, it's not exactly completely re-implementing, but there's some additional cost to that, which is a drawback to being early.
Now, you guys have, I'm assuming, got something to be able to help out with these recommendations that are coming out here. So if I have the problem of not knowing what's involved with this project, what can I do to be able to go off and to discover this kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, I think the recommendations for early adopters, I would say important things are discovery and consolidation, right? So there's plenty of ways for, especially our customers, this is one of the things that we try to help them with. All of our customers that tell us that they're using cloud, we're like, so this is the area you're going to need help with. One, of course, being discovery. So what does that cover? Application performance monitoring, SAM, what else do we have? WPM,
Right.
For SaaS services, so NetPath. These are all different ways to help get that discovery phase, understanding what's in your environment right now.
Right, and then application sort of changing more to an APM approach to monitoring, especially if you were early. You've got a lot of technologies maybe that you're not accustomed to. You've got ideally horizontally scaled applications that are based on cloud native technologies, and so there may not be a lot of traditional infrastructure to monitor at all. And so for them, being able to do application tracing with code injection, being able to do log aggregation and analytics at a really high scale that maybe they haven't before because the ephemeral nature of cloud-based logging, it's just harder. There's no disk to necessarily go to pull logs from 6 months ago. And then a little bit of a focus more on external monitoring, even beyond NetPath, right? Where this is, how is the application actually performing for users as a way of tracking back and sort of discovering what the components of that are that were built out of that early cloud-native technology.
And the consolidation part, I think we have a nice tool we built with Microsoft, the Azure Cost Calculator. Mm-hmm. That's one of those ways where we can help you understand where you're actually spending your money right now. So if you're thinking about, maybe moving, or if you find yourself early adoption, or maybe you want to be in early adoption, you might have a way to say consolidate certain workloads that you might not even know were happening, right? You might have maybe too much sprawl, and you might want to be able to rein that in, especially in the early adoption phase where everybody's like, oh, I get my own sandbox in Azure. So
there's a little bit of shadow IT with
shadow
early
IT,
adoption.
right. So you might have there, it's kind of one of these ways where we want to help our customers understand where they're spending their dollars in the Azure cloud.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a bunch of good stuff as well for built-in tools to provide you with some guardrails, as my good friend Pumila likes to say, with governance to make sure that you don't give everybody admin access all over the place and don't give everyone ownership access to everything, to kind of keep people within their own little compartments and kind of prevent this sprawl. But you have the tools that we've developed together to be able to kind of discover stuff and go off and make recommendations on consolidation.
But that's not where most of our customers are. I mean, I can't imagine there's a company out there that does nothing but early adoption of all these technologies, right? So the bulk of the work that we always see and hear about is that middle part, yeah?
Yeah, it's the early adopters are definitely on the smaller side. Okay. The bulk of the people that I've seen, the customers I've been talking to, they're definitely smack in the middle, that elephant part of that curve.
And so where are the benefits and challenges for the people in the middle?
Generally, the benefit-wise, I mean, they've already learned the lessons from the people that were the early adopters for these different technologies. They've figured out the bumps and the grinds and the support issues that they have to worry about. And then, more documentation's available, more training's available for people. There's a more rich ecosystem they can lean on to be able to get stuff fixed and be able to ask questions. Those are definitely some of the benefits that I've seen. Potentially they can choose to follow those individuals or, deviate from that path and then go down their own path with the lessons learned from the first guys.
Well, it's also a lot easier, right? The technology's a lot more mature.
It's more mature.
There's tools that are second and third generation that are a lot easier to work with. And to your point, the training is actually, there's formalized training, but especially with cloud, so much of it is free.
Mm-hmm. So recommendations for the people in the middle, like for me, one very big important one, especially for everything you're doing these days, I tend to focus on the security aspect. Like, what is it you're doing where you are right now, and are you current with everything? Because in the early adoption phase, near and dear to my heart, being a database guy, it was always, we'll worry about that security stuff later. So whatever got deployed in that early adoption phase that is now in that middle pit of despair, right. One of those things of despair, like, oh, this is hard, is one of those things is, we need to apply security. We need to make sure that our data is secure and private. So, for the recommendation is you have to plan for that because you know that it's coming.
So a lot of that goes back to Rick, what you were talking about really taking a step back and assessing and like making security for once one of the things that we get to put put up front, because I don't think in IT we ever think about security last. I think we tend to think about security first. It just tends to be kind of last in the budget, or maybe people who are pushing rapid adoption are like, oh, we'll get to that later. It gives us a chance to really to step back and say, hey, hold on a second. This cloud thing, the whole point is to increase access and availability and let more people get in here and for us to be more responsive and more nimble, but that's kind of scary if you haven't put governance in place. What about sprawl? That feels like something that early adopters maybe ended up with a lot more, that you have an opportunity by being middle in terms of adoption to really keep under control from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people go through, like you mentioned, and just simply run with too much administrative rights. And therefore they can go off and create what they need to get the job done and then move on to the next task at hand, and maybe are missing some good, clear guidance and governance.
Right.
So we have some very good governance from people that are doing cloud adoption at Microsoft. We call that the cloud adoption framework, if you will. And that allows you to kind of step back and see what have other people done when they're adopting these new technologies, what things they put in place to make sure that they don't end up with a lot of sprawl. But if you've inherited the sprawl, you've, as you mentioned in the first segment, you've hopefully discovered where that is, you've taken advantage of some cost benefits, and you've consolidated some stuff, and you don't have that issue now. You're in the middle phase of the adoption.
Right. For a lot of our customers will use our Virtualization Manager tool, which they've been using for years on-prem to manage sprawl. And I had someone talking about it the other day, and he said, oh, it's the moving problem. You know, you get rid of as much stuff as you can before you pack everything in boxes, and then you move it to your new house, then you unpack it, and then you throw away 20% of what you moved because you didn't get rid of it all. Right. You know, don't take sprawl that you already have on-prem into the cloud, because it might be free for you sitting in a rack, but it is not free once it gets to cloud. So that area of sprawl management and thinking about what do we actually have and what do we need ends up being something that's really important, but it's much easier because you already know how to do it. So you can carry those skills forward. Do you see a lot of people also seem to be happier now because they have options from vendors that they've been working with for a really long time? They don't have to go and pick some bespoke small company for each niche that they're trying to serve. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of the technologies are starting to flesh out with different experiences and different levels of maturity within each of the different providers in the cloud space, for sure. Also, even just the general knowledge of the individual organizations and teams looking to use cloud technologies, they're becoming much more aware of what they're comfortable with of using inside of a cloud and what they're comfortable with keeping on premises and having kind of a hybrid connectivity too. So I'm finding more customers are moving away from the whole concept of the best of breed, and instead kind of I'm bringing this into a clearinghouse of more of one to be able to take advantage and leverage of scale and leverage the benefits of having that one partner, as they say, the one throat to choke, if you will, when there becomes an issue.
So I think that's also what you're seeing on our end about trying to help the bulk of the people that are in the middle and working with companies that they trust. You know, this is why we have our tools now listed in the Azure Marketplace, right? In order to help you understand what's really happening, because we have lots of experience and lots of customers, and we know the struggles and the concerns that they have. And it's been beneficial to say, yeah, we're the same company that you trust before, and we're working with Microsoft, and that we can help you monitor and manage and alert on those cloud services and infrastructure that you're actually running as well. So it's a nice way to say, basically, that trusted advisor role. It doesn't matter where you are, what you're running, there's going to be a way for us to help you get your job done.
And so, well, exactly. And there's also been time for vendors to really make that integration simple, right? If you go back, for those of you who saw Lab 80, we actually did a demo of what that looks like deploying out of the marketplace, and you should definitely check that out. But it's cool because the forms that actually ask for users' passwords, the way that that's actually set up, the way that it's configured are all part of that marketplace, and then it goes and creates that instance for you. It also, there's some other things that we've done in the last few years to make that easier, like any other vendor that's been around for a while, like our Orion platform products can run on Azure SQL, so that if you want to actually stop managing your database, that's an option. And then server and application monitoring has a license model now that's node-based, so that it makes it easier. You're not thinking about all the little discrete things that you're monitoring. Instead, you're more thinking about the application infrastructure for the apps that are running in cloud, and not so much about this runs on that server with this many instances, and just a lot more flexibility for the way that you would do an install.
So I know you guys have already done an episode on this, but I haven't seen that one about Azure Marketplace. And so I'm curious, what is your adoption like from your customers using your products inside the Azure Marketplace?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, we did a lab episode on it, so that kind of is the answer that you all are actually doing that.
Right.
But that was really to showcase that we had added the Orion product portfolio But we've had a couple of products in the marketplace for some time, and we actually started with DPA, Database Performance Analyzer.
Database Performance Analyzer. Yeah. So here's the thing. Database, what DPA does is it's going to analyze the activity inside of the engine. I don't care where that engine's running. I don't care if it's running in your data center or somewhere else. It's an engine, and it has, it's either running, runnable, or suspended, and that's it. That's what we're going to track, and we're going to aggregate up. So yeah, we've been there for a while. So this was great talking about the middle, but what about the last third there, the late adopters?
So being a late adopter isn't necessarily a bad thing. You can leverage a lot of the stuff that people have done before you. The technology is more mature. There's less potential risk that you have to worry about. But still, at the same time, there's still time to actually go ahead and do the implementation.
Okay, now you say it's not necessarily a bad thing, and I might agree for the most part, but I'm going to tell you of two things that you really need to consider. One is that it could be harder for you to find people to work on those systems because they're so old, like COBOL, mainframe. We can go down the list of the stuff that still exists, and people say they're still looking for these programmers to do these weird things.
Don't worry, we're going to migrate it.
But that it's not that they don't exist, but they also come with a higher cost, right? This is a risk you have. But you're also, if you're that much of a late adopter, your competitors may have been years ahead of you compared to where you are now. So you could be really far behind. Let's say like if you wanted to build a cloud these days, if you hadn't been spending money in any sort of cloud development for the last 10 years, you're probably going to be far behind and never catch up.
It's definitely got some catch-up things to have to worry about in that particular sense. But I'll also talk about one thing that's very near and dear to my heart right now for the Windows side of things is end of support for Windows Server 2008 R2. It ends, this show airs after the end date, I think. I have to think about when that is. No, actually, it's January 15th. So this is before it ends.
Is that the extended support?
That's the end of regular support, and you can purchase extended support if you need it. This is not an advertisement for Microsoft. Right. But I'm just saying, this is an example of someone that may be waiting to adopt newer technologies, still using the old stuff because it still works, but you're putting yourself potentially at risk because it's going to be now more expensive to have to worry about getting security updates from a vendor like Microsoft. It also can be another issue where I came across a customer that we're also trying to get as much as they possibly can out of their capital investments for their hardware, that now their hardware is out of support by the vendor and it's coming off of lease and they have to purchase it or buy another extended support just for the hardware that's running their virtualization platform. Wow. So watch out for both of those capital cost extended supports and also software-based extended supports too. But what are your recommendations for this?
Well, when we talk to customers who are, I don't even say late. They'll usually say, well, we sort of have a toe in the water, or we're starting to experiment. Yeah, or maybe they have a couple of, they maybe start with backup, or maybe they move a couple of variable workloads out or something else. What they are telling us is that they are spending a lot of time learning, that they're using this opportunity because it basically costs them nothing to really learn about technology, and there's so much available that they know that when they are ready to go between standardization, technology tends to become less expensive over time, that they're going to be ready to go because they want to be able to accelerate that as much as possible once they launch. And a lot of customers, certainly if you've been a part of seen any of the Thwack Camp episodes, you've heard us talk about opportunities for free learning on the networking side. Definitely a lot of them are involved with Cisco DevNet, and then they're also involved with Microsoft Learn for their Microsoft technology.
So obviously this is where I put the plug in for aka.ms/AZOpsFun for the operations fundamentals about what is going on with Azure. Z for you Americans. It gives you a free sandbox to go off and to learn cloud technologies, doesn't cost you anything, tracks your progress, gamification, all the cool stuff that all the cool kids are doing. And you can try that out for free right now. And you can put that in the lower thirds down there, right?
We'll put that in the lower third, and we'll also put it in the show links and notes so that you guys can click on that as well. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation because the big takeaways here, at least for me, are one, ignore the hype. Well, don't ignore it, but don't use that as a guide to knee-jerk make decisions about what you should be doing.
It's like be informed about the hype.
Right, be informed about the hype. The second one is there's no shame, regardless of where you are along the adoption path. You have reasons for it, just be aware of where you are so that you are aligned with your competition and available technology and cost, and really aligned with what your business actually needs, not what the hype is telling your business that it actually needs. And then we had a chance to talk about some recommendations for how to use products that you already have as you go through this evolution. But is there anything else that you'd recommend? Like how often should people take that moment to consider where they are on that journey and where they are in that process?
So I recommend people at least do it on a quarterly basis, even if it's just like a lunch and learn, brown bag type thing. Just get together and kind of shoot shop about what's going on in the technology area, where you are in the different kind of hype environment of the adoption life cycle and things like that. At least a quarterly basis, maybe once a year if that's more of a slower adoption kind of curve, your call.
So not necessarily assign somebody to keep an eye on that, but maybe brown bags every now and then?
For me, it's a group effort. If you assign one person, that one person's going to get overwhelmed with it, so involve others with it. But you have to be curious and you have to want to follow up.
That's awesome advice. Well, so hopefully you've got a lot of great questions for us in the live chat, which will be over here to your right. And if you don't see that chat, it's because you're not with us live. Swing by our homepage, which is lab.solarwinds.com. Check out dates for upcoming episodes and make sure you can be with us so that we can take your questions on air. Thanks again for being a part of SolarWinds Lab. I'm Patrick Hubbard.
I'm Thomas LaRock.
Hey, and I'm Rick Claus from Microsoft.